issue. What kind of a problem is this for your case?
It's a major problem, and the government will say it's a major problem for them, but it's more of a problem for us because it's critical in any homicide case when the time of death is. The government maintains that the time of death, early on in this case, that they said the time of death was earlier in this case, and in fact they maintain that the victim was suffocated, tortured, and abused for at least an hour, perhaps more. We now find out 5 days ago, after 2.5 years of investigation, that the government was in possession of a BlackBerry that showed 2 emails going out, one at 11:05, one at 11:07. I guess the jury's out, so to speak, on whether those emails went out, but we just found out about this 5 days ago. We could be in a position of no harm, no foul if they had the BlackBerry and we could recreate everything, but it was sent to the Secret Service to be imaged, and it was never imaged. Then it was returned to Mr. Wallen's wife. She then returned it to his employer, and now it's gone.
And what do you call the fact that it was never imaged? I mean, how do you feel about that?
Probably words that your viewers don't want to hear.
Yeah. So not helpful.
Not helpful is a good start.
All right, and if you can just talk about other developments in court today, what basically was the outcome of today?
I think the judge realized that both sides are at an impasse on some discovery issues, and the judge said, without me getting involved, why don't all of you go back to the drawing table and try to hammer things out, and we'll of course follow the judge's request and try to do that, and we'll come back on the 22nd.
And what will that be, just another status?
Another status, more lawyers talking, so, which is hurtful for everybody to hear.
And I'm sorry, please give me who you're representing in full
Sure.
and all that stuff.
Bernie Grimm, I represent Mr. Price.
You do. You know, there's something that was, it sounds like it was in a government response, was something about a torture website supposedly Mr. Price had been on.
Someone had told me that had come out in a discovery, one of the discovery filings a week ago or 10 days ago. I haven't seen it, so I haven't been able to comment on it.
All right, you can't say anything on that.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you for talking.
Okay.
Thank you.
One quick question.
Sure, I did it. Yeah. I don't know if that helps.
Just explain really what the significance is, even if the government screwed up on the BlackBerry. If the murder happened a few minutes later or an hour later,
Sure,
before,
well, actually,
how would that change things?
Because the government maintains that the victim was tortured, murdered, abused, assaulted for an hour or over. If the victim was sending email messages at 11:07 and a 911 call was placed at 11:49, then it's impossible, one would think, that he was murdered before he sent the message. So that's the significance of it. It takes the time of death. It narrows the window of opportunity. The government's window of opportunity previously was about an hour, at least an hour, probably closer to 70 minutes. Now it appears, if it turns out that these emails are accurate, it's now on the outside 42 minutes, which makes it difficult for the government to prove all these allegations, everything that went into went on in the house, orchestrating the crime scene, cleaning up, delaying and calling the police. It's a hard sell to say that all happened.
Wouldn't they argue that the forensic evidence shows that those things did happen, though, if not the exact time?
Actually, the forensic evidence doesn't show that. So, but that'll play out later on.
Finally, would the defense have to try to prove that an intruder might have introduced a paralytic drug on Mr. Wallen? Because the forensics supposedly are showing, if we believe the coroner's report, that these wounds were surgical, and that was impossible to happen if someone was not incapacitated ahead of time. How could that be explained?
There's no forensic credibility to anything you just stated. I'm not sure where you got it from, but you said a mouthful. You certainly paid attention more in biology than I did. But
it was in the affidavit, the police affidavit.
Actually, that wasn't in the affidavit, but it's a little bit more complicated than that. These things will all be well laid out at trial. So.
Sure. Do you have?
Hey, Ben.
How are you?
How come you never age?
Why?
All these other guys, their hair fall out.
I think I'm aging quite a bit.
Look at Paul. I mean, guy used to.
My hair hasn't fallen out, Bernie.
No, this guy used to be in front of the courthouse with about 50 13 women around him.
You know, my hair is all white now, so you know.
I know, but you got it.
You have hair.
Okay, Mr. Grimm, I got to ask you all these questions again. The significance.
I did it.
The significance.
I don't know if that saves any time.
Significance of this blanket.
Yes.
What is it?
The government's, obviously in any homicide case, the time of death is critical. The government maintains that all three defendants individually and collectively murdered Mr. Wone and assaulted him and what's the word I'm looking for? Staged and orchestrated the crime scene in an hour or a little bit more, probably closer to 70 minutes. We now find out 2.5 years later that Mr. Wone perhaps sent 2 email messages out, one at 11:05 and one at 11:07. The 911 call was placed at 11:49, and those are absolutes. So if he placed his last email message, and that's the only one we know about. There, perhaps as far as we know, there could have been ones after. But if his last email transmission was 11:07, 911 was called at 11:49, then that almost cuts in half the amount of time the government said was available for everything, for the crime scene to be orchestrated.
What does that mean for your case?
It's bad for our case because BlackBerry wasn't preserved, it wasn't imaged, and now it's lost. So we have no way to forensically prove that that in fact happened.
But if those times are correct, what does that mean?
If that times are correct and we could prove that, that would be very, very favorable to our case. More importantly, it would gut the government's case, at least their theory at this point. I'm sure it's the government. They have a lot of time, they have a lot of money. If things get tight, I guess they can ask for a bailout. I'm sure they'll retort their investigation or their theory in this case. But at the present, if I was on the other side, I would feel that it would hurt my case.
Now, the issue is the Secret Service, and I hate to ask you, but why were they involved in this?
That's standard. Yeah, the Secret Service has excellent laboratories to do computer imaging and IT work and computer forensic technology.
And it was turned over to them and they didn't do the work?
It wasn't, I don't think it was their fault. I think it was turned over to them and they weren't given specific instructions to image it. I don't know at this point.
That's a big thing for you all.
It's a big thing for both sides. I think the government wished it was done properly too.
One other thing I noticed is apparently the restrictions on your client and the others have been eased to some degree.
Yeah, they've been relaxed. I think they were in heightened supervision program, and then that was knocked down to drug testing once a week and calling in or showing up once a week. Now it's simply to call in once a week or notify the pretrial services if you're going to travel outside the jurisdiction.
Finally, when do you think this case might actually go to trial?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think all these discovery issues got to be hammered out before the judge is going to feel comfortable setting a trial date. But for my client, I think for everybody, and the government too, I think everybody wants this resolved quicker than sooner than later. It's been a long time for Mr. Wone's wife and his family. I'm sure it's stressful for them. It's stressful for my client as well.
Were you surprised when you heard about the BlackBerry?
23 years, no, I'm not surprised anymore. In homicide cases, nothing shocks me. So. Unfortunately, it just means I'm getting older.
Okay.
See ya.